After 7 years in prison, Cockney gambler Jake Green is finally released. 2 years later, Jake and his brother Billy visit a major casino to reclaim money owed by its owner, crime boss Dorothy Maksha. Despite his bodyguard Paul's warnings, Maka allows Jake to join his private game. Jake, hesitant due to his claustrophobia, reluctantly takes the elevator. At the table, Jake loses his first bet on purpose to lull Maksha into a false sense of security, then wins the same bet, collecting his winnings. As Billy and Jake leave with bags full of cash, they are approached by a man named Zach, who warns them of impending danger and gives Jake his card. Jake attempts to take the stairs but passes out, with Zach's card revealing, "Take the elevator." Maka, fearing Jake's revenge after his prison time and a past incident involving Jake's sister-in-law, orders Paul to hire a top hitman to eliminate Jake. At the hospital, Jake is told there is no immediate cause for his blackout and is advised to rest. As Jake heads home with bodyguards, they are ambushed and shot, but Jake narrowly escapes after finding a card that says, "Pick this up." Jake's driver is also shot, but Zach arrives in time to save him. The hitman, Sorter, is puzzled by his failure, suspecting someone tipped Jake off, but telling Maksha he simply had a bad feeling. Zach introduces Jake to his partner, Avi, who reveals Jake's medical file, showing he has a rare blood disease and only 3 days to live. Zach and Avi offer protection in exchange for all of Jake's money and his compliance. Skeptical, Jake initially leaves, suspecting a trick, but subsequent tests confirm the diagnosis. Despite his doubts, he learns from his private doctor that his prognosis is indeed grim. After threatening his private doctor to ensure he isn't being paid off, Jake admits he has no choice. He withdraws money from the bank and accepts the deal with Zach and Avi. During a car ride, Avi reveals they are loan sharks who will use Jake's money for their loans. After their first client visit, Avi demands Jake to recount his history with Maksha. Jake explains that Maksha employed 3 foolish men known as the Three Eddies. They recruited Jake for a high-stakes game, threatening Billy's family to ensure his compliance. During the game, insults about Jake's mother led to a gunfight. The power went out, the money vanished, and Jake was soon implicated and questioned by the police. To prevent him from talking, they threatened his niece, accidentally killing his sister-in-law. Jake remains silent about Maksha's involvement, resulting in a 7-year prison sentence. During this time, Maka punished the Three Eddies for injuring him. After visiting multiple clients, Zach sends Jake to a motel. Meanwhile, Maka and Paul visit crime kingpin Sam Gold's advisor, Lily Walker, to broker a powder deal. Gold, an elusive figure revered by other crime bosses, never meets visitors and disdains publicity or second chances. Later, Jake gives more money to Zach and Avi while playing chess with Avi. Jake recounts his prison experience, where he was given a choice between 14 years of normal time or 7 years in solitary confinement. He chose solitary with his cell position between a chess master and a conman. Though they never spoke directly, they communicated through messages and library books. Over 5 years, Jake learned their formula for winning any game. After promising Jake a prison break, the 2 men abruptly vanished without explanation, leaving him behind. Upon his release 2 years later, Jake discovered they had absconded with his money, leaving behind a cryptic note about gaining intelligence from wiser adversaries. Armed with the formula he learned in prison, Jake began to enrich himself by outwitting opponents at various casinos. Despite his continued success, Jake struggled with the ethical demands of his role, finding it difficult to threaten or harm desperate clients. Meanwhile, Avi and Zach devised a plan to break into a safe containing powder promised by Maksha to crime lord Sam Gold's advisor, Lily Walker. When Maksha realized the theft, he dispatched Paul to recover the powder at any cost, leading Paul to negotiate with a rival, Lord John of the Triad, who agreed to supply the powder at an inflated price. Jake, Zach, Avi, and their team executed a daring heist at the exchange venue, using sleeping gas to incapacitate both Maksha's and John's men, stealing the money and the powder and orchestrating a deception to incriminate each other in the robbery. Later, Billy warned Jake about Avi and Zach's dangerous reputation, advising him to distance himself. Ignoring the warning, Jake returned to work, where he faced increasing pressure to carry out violent acts on behalf of Avi and Zach. Refusing to comply, Jake attempted to confront Avi, only to find himself overpowered and knocked unconscious. Upon awakening in his motel room, Jake received a call from Avi, taunting him about surviving 3 days and urging him to seek a medical checkup. Visited by his concerned niece and Billy, who left him a firearm for protection, Jake visited his doctor, who contradicted the previous diagnosis, declaring him healthy. Attempting to confront Avi for answers, Jake found himself rebuffed, while Paul investigated and implicated Jake in the ongoing troubles within Maksha's organization, prompting Maksha to order his assassination. After accumulating wealth using his strategic formula, Jake decided to take a vacation with his brother and niece. only to learn during his absence that Matcha had executed the eddies for failing to repay him. Meanwhile, Matcha found himself at a high-end restaurant when his henchmen informed him of Jake's escape. In the ensuing chaos, Sorta recognized a threat in John's lover disguised as a waitress and shot her, though not fatally. In her dying moments, she managed to inflict injury on Matcha by shooting off his finger. Subsequently, Sorta was dispatched to eliminate Lord John and his associates. Returning to Jake, he engaged in a conversation with Zach and Avi while playing golf atop a rooftop. They imparted wisdom about the illusory nature of power, revealing that gold was a symbol rather than an actual person, influencing those who invested in him. They encouraged Jake to redefine the parameters by which he allowed himself to be controlled. Following this conversation, Jake withdrew the remainder of his money from the bank and donated it all before surreptitiously entering Matcha's bedroom. Wrestling with his internal demons and ego, Jake reconciled with Matcha, admitting to deceiving him and making a charitable donation in his name before departing. To confront his fears head-on, Jake braved an elevator ride that became stuck on the 13th floor, triggering a panic attack. In a symbolic internal dialogue, he rejected his ego and liberated himself from the metaphorical game. When the elevator resumed operation, Jake encountered Matcha waiting for him with a gun, driven by his own ego-driven madness. Unfazed and at peace with himself, Jake calmly walked past Matcha, leaving him bewildered and enraged by Jake's fearlessness and defiance. Overcome with humiliation, Jake breaks down in tears as he realizes the extent of his public embarrassment. The following morning, Paul delivers a stack of local newspapers to Matcha, revealing Jake's charitable donation made in Matcha's name and portraying him as a benevolent figure in the community. Initially pleased to receive the credit, Matcha's joy is short-lived when Paul informs him that Jake now possesses the powder and has been deceiving them all along. Paul, Sorter, and Matcha's henchmen confront Billy, who attempts to protect his daughter by hiding her in a cupboard. When the men discover her, they resort to violence to coerce Billy into revealing Jake's whereabouts and the powder's location. As Paul's interrogation intensifies, Sorter becomes increasingly uncomfortable, especially when the young girl is brought into the ordeal. Rejecting his own ego, Sorter turns on his comrades, methodically eliminating them. But he ultimately makes a fatal mistake and is killed in the process. Meanwhile, Lily visits Matcha with a wreath from gold, who disapproves of the unwanted publicity surrounding Matcha's name. She informs Matcha that his time is up and won't be granted a second chance, sending him into a frantic panic. Avi and Zach bring Jake and the powder to Matcha's casino, where Avi defeats Jake in a game of chess while revealing their past connection as inmates adjacent to Jake's cell. They express their desire to free Jake, but the revelation is cut short when Matcha's casino guards arrive to escort Jake to him, accompanied by Billy's daughter. Despite the tense situation, Jake reassures his niece, further enraging Matcha, who, driven by his humiliated ego, concludes that Jake won't harm a dead man. Matcha then turns the gun on himself and pulls the trigger.